Welcome to our monthly SRC Community Corner Live Forum. I'm Winsome Sharia Witter, and we'll be demystifying conveyancing, your path to home ownership. Because owning property is one of life's most important investments, but the legal process, family land matters, and mortgage requirements can often feel complex and intimidating. So we've brought together three key perspectives: the legal, housing, and financial, to make the process clear, practical, and achievable. So don't worry about getting your notepads. The recording will remain so you can catch up on anything you might have missed. And we also have a blog recap that comes up on Monday for you to get the highlights of the discussion. But we do encourage you to participate in the conversation. Share your thoughts, your questions in the comments, whether you're joining us on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, as the conversation progresses. So let's start by laying the legal foundation with our attorney at law, Christina Blake. Welcome, Christina. No stranger to the space.
Well, thank you.
All right. Fantastic. So let's get right into it because we have a lot of grounds to cover. Walk us through the step-by-step process of buying or selling a property in Jamaica, from the agreement for sale to the registration of title.
Sure. So purchasing property or selling property in Jamaica does not have to be onerous once you have the right legal guidance. And I'm here to really lay out and break down the steps as best as possible for our audience. So the process really begins at making an offer. So once you have identified a piece of property that you are interested in, usually through your attorney, you will make an offer to the vendor. And once they are satisfied with the offer and that is accepted, it is the vendor's attorney, the responsibility of the vendor's attorney, to draft the sales agreement. Now, the sales agreement will set out the key terms and conditions of this property transaction, and it is to be sent back to your attorney as the purchaser for review and negotiation. Once you are satisfied with the sales agreement, you are to sign it and have your signature executed in the presence of a justice of the peace or your attorney. The vendor now needs to sign that same sales agreement, and their attorney is to ensure that it is deposited with the certificate of payment of property taxes for assessment. But upon signing the sales agreement as the purchaser, you are to make payment of your deposit, which is usually 5 to 10% of the purchase price, and you are also to pay a half cost for the preparation of the sales agreement. So this can run you up to 75,000 Jamaican dollars, and the price depends on the vendor's attorney. So once the sales agreement and the certificate of payment of property taxes is deposited, the vendor's attorney is to receive a notice of assessment. And this is where transfer tax and stamp duty on the property is assessed. So stamp duty in Jamaica is 5,000 Jamaican dollars, and it is borne equally by the vendor and the purchaser. So you pay 2,500, the vendor pays 2,500, and the transfer tax is usually 10% of the property's market value and is payable by the vendor. So once that assessment is received from the deposit that you have paid, the vendor's attorney is to ensure that the transfer tax and stamp duty is paid up. Once that is done, the vendor's attorney is now awaiting what we call a letter of undertaking. The letter of undertaking is to show that you are in a position to actually finance the purchase of this property. So the letter of undertaking usually means that you're either purchasing through cash or mortgage. And if you're getting a mortgage to finance your purchase of the property, this is usually a waiting period. So our mortgage expert will come on and explain to you sometimes why we have delays in getting the letter of undertaking. So once the letter of undertaking is received, the documents are sent for what we call cross-stamping. And so it is the transfer tax certificate and the other documents that are submitted for cross-stamping to occur. Once cross-stamping takes place, the purchaser's name can be registered on the title, and they receive their letters of possession and all of that, just to formalize that they are in fact the owner of the property. So that is the step-by-step, really.
Wow, this is really demystifying it, because it sounded so easy just now and nothing like what we imagine when we actually get into the process. But Christina, I know there are options where individuals can pool their funds, whether they're relatives or they are, whatever the relationship is. Explain to us, what are the key differences between joint tenancy and tenancy in common, and what pitfalls should families be mindful of when choosing between those two?
Okay, that's an excellent question, because as you said, nowadays we have many persons who are pooling funds with their business partners, their spouse, their friend to purchase property. And really and truly, your sales agreement as well as the transfer instrument will set out the type of ownership structure. So joint tenancy and tenancy in common are two types, the two types of ownership structures when it comes on to property. So you are either a sole proprietor, a joint tenant, or you own the property as a tenant in common. So sole proprietorship is pretty straightforward. It means that you purchase the property solely, and what you have asked about is joint tenancy and tenancy in common. Now, they're quite different. A joint tenancy is governed by what we call in law the rule of survivorship. And so essentially what it means is that the last surviving person owns the property solely. Tenancy in common is quite different, because you can own equal or unequal shares in the property, and you can do with your share as you please through your lifetime. So you can will your share, you can gift your share, you can sell your share. With a joint tenancy, you cannot do any of the above. So unless you sever the joint tenancy, and that is a whole other legal process where you will have to approach an attorney at law like myself, and I will ensure that the joint tenancy is severed. When the joint tenancy is severed, it becomes a tenancy in common. Now, in terms of the pitfalls, it's up for debate, because you will have some legal scholars who recommend a joint tenancy ownership structure for spouses and business partners, but I tend to differ. So when you approach your attorney in purchasing property, your attorney needs to explain to you the pitfalls that can come up when you purchase either as a joint tenant or a tenant in common. So just like with insurance, where persons are killing for the proceeds, if you know that there is a rule or a law of survivorship and the last surviving person will take the property, I mean, as you'd imagine, that can run you into a dilemma, more than a legal dilemma. And with tenancy in common, I can give you a story of a client that I have currently, where she purchased property with her former spouse. And sometimes relationships, you start to disagree, you can't see eye to eye with your spouse. What do you do with the property that you have purchased in a tenancy in common ownership structure? So this is a very common question, because if it's a one bedroom home, for example, you cannot split the bedroom in half, split the bathroom in half, split the kitchen in half, and perhaps you only have one entrance, that is the exit as well. So many persons will approach an attorney and say, look, a couple years ago I purchased property with my spouse or my friend as in a tenancy in common, and I don't know what to do, because if we can't see eye to eye, we cannot both remain in the same house. So in a situation like that, I generally ask a few questions. Are you married? Well, in this case, it's a married person, but it not only spouses purchase property as tenants in common. So I will ask, are you married? And depending on how they answer, I could, for example, invoke the Property Rights of Spouses Act. So under the Property Rights of Spouses Act in Jamaica, we have what is called the equal share rule, where if the property is the family home, On divorce or separation, you may be entitled to a 50% share in the property. So if that is brought to the courts, an order may be made for the sale of the property, and the proceeds may be divided 50-50, depending on the circumstances. The court will look at contributions towards the home, etc. So it's not necessarily 50-50. Sometimes it can be 80-20. It gets very litigious, and there are several case law on this particular legislation and area of law. So that is one option. It can be brought to the courts, and we can have the property sold, the proceeds divided. And if you are not married to the person that you own the property as a tenant in common with, another suggestion that I make is that you do a buyout. So you can buy out the other person's share, which can get very contentious if the other party does not agree. So the client that I have now, they were married, but the property was not the family home. So it gets really, when you get into the law and the different sections and subsections of the Property Rights of Spouses Act, you'll understand that it's not just straightforward. So we have many persons who believe that, oh, me and so live together, and if him divorced me, if we have a separation, then automatically I get a 50% share of the house. That is not always the case, because the law is very strict on what they define to be the family home. So if it is an investment property, or if the person is having an affair, they might disqualify as being considered a spouse under the legislation. And of course, if it's an investment property, it's not the family home. Also, if the house is inherited and then your names are registered on the title, even though it has a tenancy in common, it's not the family home. So under those circumstances, I will generally advise on the different reliefs that are available under the Partition Act, and as I mentioned before, as a buyout. So going back to the client that I have, the house was owned with her spouse, but it wasn't the family home. It wasn't the principal residence, because they purchased the property, she migrated, her husband lives in Jamaica, but the house is being rented. So they don't live together at the house, even though they own, and the title say that they are registered proprietors under tenancy in common. So in that circumstance, I could not recommend relief under the Property Rights of Spouses Act. So what I've advised her to do is to do a buyout. So what that entails is communication between myself as her attorney and her former husband's attorney for her to purchase her husband's share in the property. So these are lived realities. When she purchases her husband's share now in the property, she becomes the sole proprietor. So this is an option that is available to persons who purchase property in a tenancy in common, and then there is a disagreement or there is a falling out between your spouse, your friend, your business partner, you name it, and that's for the tenancy in common. So that is why personally I would recommend a tenancy in common for spouses. But as I said, other legal scholars disagree. In a perfect world, a joint tenancy is ideal for spouses and close relatives, because the understanding is that, okay, when I die, the other person gets the property and the other person believes the same. But when you enter into this ownership structure and you're looking to purchase property, you have to think far ahead and think of what you want to do with the property in the future. So I would recommend a joint tenancy if you are looking to pass on your share in the property to your children, for example, through a will, because you simply cannot do that with a joint tenancy, but you can with a tenancy in common.
Amazing, great information indeed. And you have broken it down so nicely. Nev, Willie, we acknowledge your question. We'll take the questions later on. Let's Now that we have laid the legal foundation, let's move on over to see how NHT helps Jamaicans on their home ownership journey. Recognizing that Jamaicans can be living in Jamaica or in the diaspora, right, Danielle?
That's it. That's it. In
Right.
Jamaica or in the diaspora.
Yeah, so Danielle Edwards, Senior Corporate Communications and Public Affairs Coordinator at the National Housing Trust. Welcome.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here tonight. Such a wonderful conversation already. It's great. And hearing Christina really, really, really break down the legal aspect of it. That's why you need a lawyer. That's why you need a lawyer in the process.
Indeed. All right. So let's talk eligibility. What are the requirements for accessing NHT financing and how does the application process typically work?
All right. So the National Housing Trust is an organization that most Jamaicans, if you are working, they're familiar with. When you open your payslip and you see NHT deductions, and you say, what is that? So generally, the National Housing Trust helps Jamaicans to achieve their home ownership dreams, and a lot of Jamaicans now are turning and wanting to access home ownership. So to be eligible for the financing, you'd be surprised to know that persons are not aware or don't think that there are any eligibility criteria to accessing financing. So generally, how I like to break it down is that you must be earning an income because this is financing, so you need to repay. You must be between the ages, from 18 to 70, and you must be contributing. Now, there are different eligibility criteria depending on which category you fall in. And so we like to recognize our PAYE, pay as you earn. We like to recognize our self-employed contributors and our voluntary contributors. So for those persons who are PAYE, that's a category that most Jamaicans would find themselves in. Let me tread light here that a lot of Jamaicans would find themselves in. And so you must have at least 52 weeks of contributions. We must be able to find 52 weeks of contributions for you. It does not have to be 52 consecutive weeks. So say, for example, you worked for 2 months in 2016, you worked for another few months in 2019, and then you're working for another 8 months in 2025, as long as we can find 52 weeks of contributions for you. However, 3 months of contributions must be consecutive leading up to your application. So say, for example, you're looking and you want to purchase a property, we must be able to find at least 13 weeks or 3 months of consecutive contributions. For self-employed contributors, we must be able to find 52 weeks of contributions for you as well, but you must have 1, paid up all outstanding arrears, and 2, you must have made 6 months or 2 quarterly payments. So with our PAYE, it's 13 weeks. With our self-employed contributors, it's 6 months or 2 quarterly payments. And for those persons who are self-employed, you go through the registration process with the TAJ, and that's where all of your taxes are paid. And so with our voluntary contributors, Winsome, you mentioned overseas. And so we have something for those persons who are residing overseas. So if you're a Jamaican and you're interested in purchasing property in Jamaica, do not think that you are excluded. You can access financing from the NHT. So if you're residing abroad and you have permanent domicile abroad, you can register as a overseas voluntary contributor by completing a form that's available on our website. And in order to begin accessing a benefit, we must be able to find 104 weeks, that's 2 years of contributions for you, of which 1 year must be consecutive. So PAYE is 13 consecutive contributions, self-employed is 6 months or 2 quarterly payments, and for voluntary contributors, overseas voluntary contributors, it's 2 years, 104 weeks, and 1 year of which must be consecutive. We also have another category for pensioners. You do have a group of persons as I had said earlier, you must be 18 to 70. You do have a group of persons who are retired but want to continue benefiting. And under certain circumstances, they get special permission to continue benefiting. And when we say voluntary, we mean that they are not required to contribute, but they are contributing because just in the event that persons, you may not be aware, NHT, you are legally mandated to pay over NHT contributions. And if you are a Jamaican resident, who you are working overseas with a valid work permit, you also have the opportunity to make contribution payments. And so regardless of where you are on the spectrum, the NHT has accessibility, makes accessibility really wide and really, really expansive so that everybody can benefit. So when you talk about eligibility criteria, that's it right there. So if you live overseas, if you are a Jamaican who is working overseas, but you are a resident in Jamaica, if you're a pensioner who has permission to contribute, you know, we have the access for financing for you.
Fantastic. All right. What are the policies? Because a lot of changes have been taking place, especially earlier this year. So what policies, arrangements are in place to support NHT contributors with the conveyancing process? Because sometimes they come to the NHT before they think about the lawyer.
You know, so the conveyancing process, the NHT offers the financing because for most Jamaicans, you know, if you're going to purchase a property, most Jamaicans need financing. Some persons lucky enough to have cash, but for most persons, they need some kind of financing to help them along the way. And that's where the NHT comes in. First thing you need to know is how much you can afford before you even start getting to your lawyer, getting to your realtor. Ask yourself, how much am I able to afford? And what you can do is that you can access our NHT mortgage calculator. Most commercial mortgage institutions have a mortgage calculator. You enter a few demographic data, and then it's able to churn out how much you can afford, what your payback is, and the percentage that you'll be able to qualify for. And if you're ready, so say for example, you have Christina on your side now and you're ready to take it to the next level, you're on the hunt, you want to start the process, we have an eligibility letter that you can generate all by yourself. Before you start to come in with documentation and tearing and pasting, it's not anymore. You go NHT online, it's one click of a button, and we generate that eligibility letter for you. And so I just needed to lay that groundwork. And please do not go there without your eligibility letter when you're looking for a property, because you need to show the vendor that you can afford to purchase this property. So at the NHT, we have a financing arrangement package for everybody at every segment of the home ownership journey. But because of the time, I'm just going to go over the major ones. So if you're looking to purchase property on the open market, you're looking to buy on the open market, you can access as an individual, you're an individual, you can access up to $9 million. So we implemented new policies in July. So we were up from 7.5, it was previously 7.5, and now we're up to $9 million. And for persons who are earning $30,099 per week or less, you can access up to $12 million to purchase a property on the market if it is about $14 million or less. And why we do that is because we want to ensure that we are creating opportunities for affordability for those contributors who need it the most. So for two applicants now, whether that's your spouse, we spoke about tenants and tenants in common and joint tenancy. So two applicants can come together and they can access up to 17 million to purchase a property. And we also have something for family members where up to 3 family members can come together to purchase a property and they can access up to 23 million. And in addition to our arrangements for open market properties, we also have our scheme solutions, which are going like hot bread. Everybody is trying to get an NHT development And so for NHT scheme solutions, if you are an individual, you can access up to 15 million for your NHT unit. And let me preface this by saying that NHT scheme developments are 100% financed. It means you need no deposit. It means you need not to pay any housing related costs that usually are associated with a housing purchase. So you can get up to 100% financing. The only thing that you'll be required with an NHT unit is to pay a $3,500 administrative fee. So 2 applicants get up to $17 million, and 3 applicants, as I said earlier, get up to 23. And the great thing, 23 million, and the great thing about NHT scheme units is, in addition to the no deposit, we also make reservations for persons with disabilities and young adults. So across NHT schemes, we're required to reserve about 10% of our developments for young adults. And when you look into what the trend is, younger and younger persons are more interested in purchasing property. Property purchase is no longer an event that persons achieve later in life. Younger persons are pushing and they want to purchase a property. So we had to put this in place for them. So say, for example, you're not interested in buying a property because you want to build your dream house. You watch HGTV and you said, I have my own property in mind. Then the NHT has something for you. So if you want to build, if you want to construct, we have financing that's available. So if you want to purchase land or if you want to build on your own land, you know, some Jamaicans, a lot of us, we inherit land or we have land sitting down, we have arrangements for you. So if you are building as a single individual, you get up to $11 million. That's $2 million more than if you were purchasing on the open market, and we had to put it up to 11 to match the current construction climate. And if you say, for example, you don't have a piece of land and you want to purchase a piece of land and construct, you're going to divide that 11 million. So you get $5 million to purchase a piece of land and $6 million to construct. Similarly, for 2 applicants, as I said before, 17 million. If you do have a piece of land, you get 7 million to purchase the land and 10 million to construct. And for 3 family members, you get up to 23 million, 10.5 million to purchase the land, and up to $12.5 million to construct. And in addition to these, we also have our smart energy solutions and arrangements where we increased our smart energy loan, where persons can outfit their property with energy saving technology. So whether that is rainwater harvesting, biomass, solar equipment, which is pretty popular, you can do that at the same time when you're applying for the financing. So you get up to $2.5 million, 10 years to repay. And the great thing about our solar energy or smart energy suite of products is that for the loan, it was prior to July 1 at a fixed 5% interest rate. Now we've pegged the interest rate to your income. So right across the spectrum, it makes it even more affordable because we're responsible. We're responsible players in the market, and we want our mortgagers to be able to access renewable energy solutions. And speaking of financing, so you're wondering what are the interest rates? I'm happy to say that the NHT, I don't know what VM is going to say, but the NHT has the lowest interest rates in the market. So from, if you're earning minimum wage to $30,099, your interest rate is 0%, nada. Zilch, 0, and that is where about 60% of our mortgages are at the 0% category. If you are earning $30,001 to $40,099 per week, this is per week, your interest rate is 2%. And if you are earning $42,001 to $100,099 per week, your interest rate is 4%, and $100,001 and above, your interest rate is about 5%. And quickly, some of the changes that is a whole heap, some of the changes that we've also instituted to, we've reduced the deposit and the service charge. You would have heard about the deposit earlier from Christina. And we restructured the deposit and service charge requirements to improve affordability, because sometimes the deposit can or the service charge can sometimes be the impediment to accessing a home. And so what we've done is for contributors earning $30,099 weekly, or less, they're able to access up to 98% financing for houses that are priced at $40 million or less. And if you are co-applying and your weekly income average at same amount, averages at $30,099 or less, you're also able to access that 98% financing. So all we require is a 2% deposit instead of the 5% if you are within that income category. And our service charges also, we've reduced it. If you're earning minimum wage to $30,099, that's 0%. From $30,000 to $42,000, that's 2%. It was previously 5%. And if you're earning $42,000 and above, that is 5%. And we have a few enablers to help persons, again, who need a little assistance to bridge that affordability gap. We have a home grant of $3.5 million that's available to NHT contributors earning minimum wage and $30,099 weekly. So what this $3.5 million does, you can add that to what you would have been qualified for, and you do not repay that grant. That grant, I don't like to say free money, but you don't repay that grant. You only repay what you would have qualified for. And we also have a disability grant for those contributors who have a disability or they are the caregiver of somebody with a disability. They get up to $300,000 to retrofit the property to suit that person's needs. If there are two persons there, they can co-apply and they get up to $600,000 in grants to suit that person's needs. And we, I heard Christina give her story, and I must give my story too. It's always heartwarming seeing those persons who have a disability and they're able to achieve the independence that they need in their own property, because sometimes that is a concern. What will I do? How will I manage on my own? And we work with the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, and we are guided by them as to how we handle this. And for our units as well, the NHT units, we work with the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities to retrofit the units. So we retrofit the units free of cost. So if you are a person with disabilities, we retrofit the unit free of cost, working with the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities to ensure that you maintain your independence and your autonomy. We also have something at the NHT, another enabler called the contribution refunds towards deposit. You heard we're talking about deposit. And again, that may, sometimes a deposit, as I say, can be a roadblock to you jumping onto the housing market block. But with the contribution towards deposit, persons are able to access contributions that are not yet due to put towards housing related costs, whether that's a deposit, whether you need to pay Christina with your legal fees. And you heard Christina mention several fees earlier: registration, service charges, stamp duties. Your contribution refund towards deposit can assist with that. And we also have a parent assist facility where parents can partner with their children to improve their financing and their charges and their chances of becoming a homeowner, especially for scheme units. And quickly, one more thing is that we have a microfinancing facility available where persons, if you want to also top up what you would have qualified for, you can access up to $1.95 million through our partner credit unions to put towards the other housing related costs. So say, for example, you're purchasing a house and the house needs to be renovated, or you have other housing related costs, again, those fees, you can access the microfinancing to be able to put towards that. And it's 6% secured and 9% unsecured. And it's up to 5 years to repay the microfinancing. So I think that covers the length and breadth of it with some.
A lot of wow in the comments.
I tried to go through it.
The Better In Me podcast says, Daniel, make me want to go on NHT site right now.
We need a part two, Winsome. We need a part two, because
I was telling Christina earlier that
I was trying to get through all of it, and there's so much more I can share, but because we have time, we're on a time crunch.
Never mind. I'm sure we will bring you back. Definitely have to bring you back because there are so many things that you're sharing now that I mean, I've been watching NHT and it's the first I'm hearing
Yes.
some of them because I thought I caught
Really?
everything that's shared, but I definitely yes, so that's
Yes.
fantastic.
But we have
Oh,
something for everybody.
fantastic. All right, in the interest of time, we are going to go beyond NHT to the financial institutions playing a critical role in bridging the gap for many homeowners. And so we are going to make way for Alexia Campbell. Alexia is the Senior Financial Services Specialist at VM Building Society over there in Clarendon. Welcome, Alexia.
Thank you for having me, Winsome. You know,
Awesome.
I sat here and I listened to Danielle talk about all the wonderful things that the NHT has to offer. And in my mind, I'm like, why Winsome set me up like this? Why didn't Winsome let me go first?
No, but you know, Alicia, you can't because we're partnering on this. Remember that VM is a partner
Absolutely.
on our external finance mortgage program.
Which
So
you didn't mention.
yeah, it's
All
time
right,
to
that's where
mention it, guys.
that's
You
where
mention it
you
there.
come in. All right,
Happy to be
Alexia,
here,
let's get
Winsome.
you started. What does it mean to be mortgage ready? And what are the essential steps people should take before applying?
All right. So this is a really good question because from time to time, more often than not, actually, you have persons who will come into us to say that they're ready to purchase a property. But when you start to have the conversation, you begin to realize that they're not truly mortgage ready. So being mortgage ready essentially means that you are financially prepared and you can meet the relevant qualifications to obtain a mortgage in order to purchase a property. Now, I've stressed the financially prepared, but I must mention that having been doing this for a while now, I've come to realize that the mortgage process can be a very emotional journey as well. And so once you decide to take this on, you need to be mentally prepared to go the distance because it's not like purchasing a car. You see a car, you like a car, you buy a car, 1, 2, maybe a week, and you're driving the new car. The mortgage can take a little more time. And so we want you to be mentally prepared for this wait. And just know that at the end of the process, you would have received that which you truly desire. Now, to become mortgage ready, there are a few things that you would have to consider doing, right? Number one, you want to understand your finances. It requires taking a good hard look at your earnings. It requires taking a good look at your expenses. It requires taking a good look at your savings. Do you have any savings? Are you spending everything that you earn? Are you spending more than you earn? What are your expenses like on a month over month or week over week or fortnightly basis? Then you want to go ahead and create a budget. Every time I go to a presentation and I talk about budgeting, people look at me like, oh, this crazy lady, rolling eyes and everything, because we don't really want anybody to tell us how to spend our money. But a budget is a personal thing and it allows you to truly give an outline of your actual monthly expenses and income so you can understand your financial situation. It wasn't until I did a budget, like actually sat down and wrote down everything that I spent for a month and put it up next to my salary, that I realized that no, man, I was almost spending everything that I earned. And so that caused me personally to take a good hard look at my finances and make the necessary changes so that I could afford a home, right? So this is something that will help you. It is not your enemy. A budget is your friend. It will show you where you are so you can make the necessary changes to get to where you want to be. The next thing we want you to do is take a look at your credit history. Now, this one is foreign to many Jamaicans, and I'm so glad we have this opportunity to share on this because there are a lot of us who are not aware that a credit bureau exists right here in Jamaica. As a matter of fact, there are two that we utilize. And so we recommend that you go online and you do the research to pull down your free credit reports, because the credit bureaus offer you one free report per year, and that will allow you to look at anything that may be on there that may be in a negative light that you can fix or change in order to make yourself more mortgage ready. So we recommend that you go ahead and pull down your free credit report, take a look at that and see if there's anything wrong on there, so you can start making the necessary changes to improve your credit, because this can be a deterrent to you getting a mortgage when you are ready. If your credit is impossibly bad, it may not be possible at this time. We are, however, always ready and willing to work with our clients and members to get them to the place that they need to be to afford their mortgage or their dream home. So you are free to come in to speak to one of us, the experts, and we can guide you as to what you need to do to get where you need to go. The next thing, I believe we're at number 4 now, you would want to do is to start saving for your deposit. Ladies and gentlemen, this part also important. Like everything I'm telling you right now is essential in your mortgage journey. Saving for your down payment and your associated costs with the mortgage is very necessary. As my two previous hosts would have mentioned, some of the costs associated with a mortgage. You need your attorney's costs, your closing costs for the vendor's attorney, talking about your deposit, and then you have the related fees for the financial institution as well that you will need to pay. And so in having this mortgage conversation with customers, I generally recommend that you have anywhere between 10, 15, and 20% of the purchase price of the property that you're looking for. Right? So you're going to want to start saving. Now is the time to save. And if it is that you haven't started yet, it's not too late. You can start now. And we have excellent products to help you to save towards this down payment. The final step that you want to do now, as you're trying to get yourself mortgage ready, is to consider the various mortgage programs out there. Are you a person for whom the NHT sole financing is appropriate? Are you earning the minimum wage and so you can access that amount at a 0% interest rate for your mortgage? Are you someone who is earning a little bit more and require a bigger mortgage, and you are in need of using the external mortgage finance program that's offered between NHT and their partners, of which VM is one of them? And so you want to look at these, and then you want to go into one of these financial institutions to see what the process is like, find out, get all your information that you need to do, and also allow us to do for you a pre-qualification assessment. This pre-qualification assessment tells us where you are. It tells us what you are able to manage at this time, what you can afford as it relates to a mortgage. And this will help you to guide your search. When you're ready to find a property to purchase, you will need to have your pre-qualification letter in hand, as Danielle previously mentioned, because any realtor that you approach as it relates to a property that's on the market, they're going to want to see that you're able to finance the purchase of this property. So get all these steps done. Come into us, let us do a pre-qualification assessment for you, and you are well on your way to mortgage readiness.
Wow. Demystifying indeed. Because y'all make it sound so easy. All right.
That's what we're here for, to make it easy.
From your experience, Alexia, what are the top reasons mortgage applications stall, and what practical tips can help applicants avoid these delays?
All right. So the number one reason that I've seen over the years is lack of funds. So we have the goal, we have the dream, we have the ambition, we have the drive, and we are ready to do this thing. Most of us will also have the income so we can afford to make the monthly payments for the mortgage, but we don't have the first dollar to cover the associated costs with processing a mortgage or with purchasing a home. Because even if you are deciding if you're going to purchase cash and you only have the price to buy the property, you're still in a little bit of a financial woe because you have to consider the associated costs at all times. And so that's the main reason that we see why mortgage applications stall. And so that's why I would encourage persons to start considering it now. It may not be a dream. At 20, you're just out of school, just starting your job, mortgage, buying a house. No, that's not where I am right now. But you want to start saving for this goal sooner rather than later. You can put aside $5,000 on a I Save a Home. That's an excellent product that we have at VM that we use to help persons to become mortgage ready. We put you on an I Save a Home. You'd start to save a minimum of $5,000 per month. There is no limit as to the amount that you can save monthly. So you decide what's comfortable for you. You decide based on when it is that you're intending to purchase your property, because if you save $5,000 per month, at the end of the year you have $60,000 plus the interest that you would have earned on the property. Now, $60,000 may not be a realistic figure to cover the associated costs for a mortgage. So maybe this is a goal that you want to have in 5 years, and you will work it out accordingly based on the number of years that you want to wait to purchase your property and the amount of money, as I said, anywhere between 10 and 20% of the purchase price that you will need to have upfront. And we can put you on an excellent program to save for that. Another reason that we find for application stalling is bad debt. So sometimes we have some facilities from way back when, a little credit card that we thought we paid off or that we knew we didn't pay off, but it was written off by the bank. And so because it was written off, we think that we're in the clear. And when we come to a financial institution and we pull your credit, we see that, oh, your credit score is bad because you've had this debt that is written off and not paid. So this is why we encourage persons to go ahead and pull their free credit report so that they can see exactly where they stand, where creditworthiness is concerned. And occasionally we do have another thing that causes the application process to stall, whereas if you're purchasing in a new development, for example, the property may not be ready in the timeline that you would want it to be ready. So if you're going to purchase a new development, you have to set realistic expectations for yourself. So if the developers tell you that the property is not going to be ready until April of 2026, do not expect that even though your mortgage was approved in September of 2025, you'll be able to move in for Christmas, because that's just not realistic. And so those are the top 3 reasons that I've seen why mortgage applications stall.
Thank you so much. Very practical indeed. And you also share the product that you can use to get ready where
absolutely
funding. So that's the kind of insight and information we want to share here, because we are making the connection where you can access the resources you need to move forward. All right, let's return to the legal side before we all come back in the conversation. Let's talk about what happens when property ownership changes through inheritance or financing. Christina, how is property transferred after death? Explain for us the difference between probate and administration and when each apply.
Okay, that's a beautiful question, because if you are on this forum, then you're looking to ensure that your assets are protected and properly distributed on your death, which is an inevitable occasion. So I like to say that property can be transferred after death through a will or by the operation of law. A will is a legal document, but I will explain to you why the other is by the operation of law. So generally speaking, if you have assets that you want to be distributed to your children, your caregiver, whomever, you would approach your attorney to draft a will for you. And before doing so, it is recommended that you have in mind at least 2 executors. Now, your executors play a very critical function in ensuring that your will undergoes a process called probate. So you want to ensure that in choosing your executors, you choose very responsible persons who on your death will act efficiently and quickly and take your will to an attorney for them to ensure that the probate process begins. So many persons even use an attorney as their executor because your will is to be safeguarded, we advise, in a fireproof safe or at your attorney's office. So your will it's a document, and it will dictate how your assets are distributed, your assets including property. So your apartment, your piece of land on the North Coast, whatever, all of that will be provided for in your will. And what happens is when your executor gets a grant of probate, your executor is actually registered on the duplicate certificate of title as the registered proprietor. And so they are then responsible to ensure that your assets are distributed based on what you have set out in your will. If you die without a will, you are considered to be intestate. And so how your property is distributed is governed under Section 4 of the Intestate Estates Property Charges Act. Now, this section of the legislation has a hierarchy, and at the top of that table is your spouse. So generally speaking, your spouse would get 50% of your residual estate, and your children would get a certain percentage, and it goes down on the table. So your spouse, your children, your parents, and if you have no spouse, no parents, no children, no grandchildren, your property escheats to the crown, meaning the government gets your land. So many persons fear this happening, and that is why they create a will. So with the intestacy laws, that is where your spouse, your child, or whomever, they become the administrator of the property. So probate is when you die leaving a will, your executor gets a grant of probate. And when you die without a will, your spouse, children, whomever approaches the attorney to have your assets distributed, they get what is called a grant of administration. So the difference is just whether you die testate or you die intestate.
Thank you so much for that. I trust we're paying attention. So mortgages often involve legal steps that aren't obvious to clients. Explain what a letter of undertaking is and why banks rely on attorneys in the mortgage process.
So we have different types of letters of undertakings. The main one for this discussion is the one that comes from the mortgage financier. So they're actually in a better position to explain to you what this is, but it's really a letter that comes from your mortgage institution or comes from the purchaser's mortgage institution, and is directed to the vendor's attorney to say, hey, this purchaser has been approved for a mortgage and we are undertaking. In other words, we are promising to remit the mortgage proceeds to you. And that letter of undertaking, as I've explained before, is very crucial because this is what the vendor uses as an indication that the purchaser is actually in a position to finance the purchase. And sometimes if this letter of undertaking is not received in a timely manner, the sale can get cancelled, or the sale can get delayed. So the letter of undertaking is very crucial, but letters of undertaking also come from attorneys. And because attorneys are governed by ethical codes of conduct, we have to honor our undertaking. So when you see a letter of undertaking coming from an attorney, it gives you some peace of mind because you know that they will not want to risk not honoring the letter of undertaking. So if it is a cash purchase, as the purchaser's attorney, I would give an undertaking to say the purchaser has the cash in hand and they are in a position to actually proceed with purchasing.
Thank you so much for that. Now, let's put the pieces together as we prepare to wrap up for this segment, because we definitely have to continue this conversation. So much more that we need to demystify so that we can provide some more practical guidance. So let's take one piece of advice from each of you for someone who's buying property for the first time. And we are going to start with Danielle, then Alexia, then Christina. One piece of advice. First time buyer.
one piece of advice. I'm going to go against you, Winsome, and I'm going to give two. Here, I'm going to give two. Research. Please do your research. As I would have mentioned earlier, the NHT has an external finance mortgage program where we're partnered with 17 mortgage institutions, and some of our contributors will be required to go through these mortgage institutions to access financing. If you're earning 30,000 above 30,099 per week, you're going to have to go through these mortgage institutions. Please do your research. Your home ownership journey is unique to you. There are similarities. Look at what the requirements are. Look at what is offered at these institutions and do your research and put it all together to know what works for you and also to prepare. We mentioned earlier a deposit, a home, and I think Alicia would have mentioned a house is not a car. A home is not something that you're going to jump up today and say, oh, I feel for a house like I feel for a party. No, a home is one of the biggest purchases that you will make. And so even if you're coming to the NHT, you get an NHT unit where there's no deposit required, you're going to want to furnish your home. And remember that this is your home. You are going to have to take on this responsibility. There is no landlord for you to call or phone if something goes wrong. And so that's where, Alicia will come in because they have adequate and apt financial advisors that can explain to you. So you would be saving with Alicia in the VM account. You'll be putting aside a little money to have a sinking fund, to have a miscellaneous fund in the event that the roof starts leaking, in the event that there is something that you must fix. You have to prepare. Do your research, prepare financially, and drive around. If you see a property that you want to purchase or you're thinking of purchasing in an area, do your due diligence, drive around. Is it practical? Sometimes we want to purchase a house and we're so desperate to purchase a house, we take it as is without considering all the factors. Consider the factors, do your research, and adequate preparation.
Thank you, Alexia.
So quickly head exactly where it's going. So she had two, I would have had two, but she covered one. So for me, it will be do not be disheartened or dismayed. As I mentioned earlier, this is a process that can be a very emotional one. I've had people come into my office and break down with tears over this process. This is probably, outside of marriage and children, this is probably the biggest commitment you will make in your lifetime. So don't rush it and don't get disheartened or dismayed if there are hiccups in the process or if it's not as seamless or smooth as you thought it would be. That is why the experts are here. We are here for you and happy to hold your hand from pre-qualification to getting your keys.
Well said, Christina.
One piece of advice when purchasing property, whether or not you're a first-time buyer, is to retain an attorney. And there are several reasons why you don't want to be one of those persons on the news who paid your deposit to a random person and did not have an attorney do the necessary title search and due diligence to verify that the property you're looking to purchase is actually owned by the person who is purporting to sell. So, attorneys play a very critical function, reviewing the sales agreement, communicating with key stakeholders. Your attorney really comes in clutch. There are clauses that are in the sales agreement that you will want your attorney to review and to negotiate for amendment or removal. Escalation clauses, forfeiture clauses, things of that nature. And Alicia mentioned persons coming into her office and breaking down. I've had a similar experience. It can become overwhelming. There are vendors who are colluding with evaluators. It really gets messy. But when you have an attorney who can give you not just legal advice, but logical support, it really is helpful. And as I've spoke in detail about joint tenancy and tenancy in common, your attorney will hold your hand and guide you as to what ownership structure you are to take. So don't try to do it alone. Retain the services of an attorney.
Well said. And so much more to go, but stay tuned for another live forum as we continue this conversation, because we have unearthed some things that needs to be demystified, and we're going to make sure we don't leave you hanging, but you have had enough information to start getting prepared, and you know exactly where you need to go to get additional assistance and support. So Daniel Edwards at the National Housing Trust, Alexia Campbell, VM Building Society, and of course our resident attorney at law, Christina Blake. Very informative indeed. All right, well said, Christina. Yes, and you all broke it down so nicely, because it sounded so easy until you mentioned at the end about the clients coming in to cry on your shoulder. But I'm sure if
It's tears of joy too, you know, and it's not just tears of woe.
indeed, but now that they have a better idea of the entities, the expert they need to reach out to, the resources they can connect with to make the process easier, we trust that more Jamaicans will be in a better position, better frame of mind as they go through the process. So let me thank you, ladies, for sharing these practical and insightful contributions that the Better in Me podcast want to get on the NHT site right now. So feel free to go on and start checking around and see what are the other areas, because as Daniel indicated, there are so many other gems, as one person mentioned, that we can actually access through the NHD and other entities. So we've learned that owning property isn't just about signing an agreement. It's about making informed choices every step of the way. And that's why Serenity Resource, Serenity Resource Connector is here to help you with the information you need to make those informed choices. So from understanding family land and joint ownership to navigating NHT benefits to staying mortgage ready and ensuring legal steps are properly completed, these are the keys to secure and confidently own your home. Indeed, the Better in Me podcast, all right, will be getting on the NHT site. So to you, our viewers who joined us live on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, remember, knowledge is power and action secures your future. But before I do the final touches, there's a question here that we should have taken. Does the court have sanctioned that buyout? Does the court sanction that buyout agreement? I think that's what the question is saying, Christina.
No, generally with a buyout, you will come to an agreement with the other party that is involved, that either of you will purchase. The court is involved under the Property Rights of Spouses Act, as I mentioned, if it is a divorce or a separation.
All right, thank you for that. And just in case the person, Nev Willie, is still here, that's your response. If not, you can go back to the replay and get the information there. All right, the Better Than Me podcast, I have a VM account, but I'm going to set up my iSave. All right, talking about taking action. That's what we love to see here. Indeed, Lady Henry Blake, 3 brilliant young ladies. Indeed, well done, ladies. Thank you again. So stay connected with us here at Serenity Resource Connector for more forums like this. And don't forget to share this session with someone you know who is on the path to home ownership. As I always say, don't keep the information to yourself. Sharing is caring. So let's get our population more informed so that we can make informed choices as we move forward. Thank you again, ladies. See you soon. Have yourselves a fantastic rest of the night. The SRC Community Corner Live Forum is brought to you on third Thursdays at 8 p.m. Visit our website at www.serenityresourceconnector.com and subscribe to receive our weekly blog post. Join us again on Thursday at 8 p.m. for our Community Development Live Forum. Thank you for watching.